essentially, your relationship building essentially is nothing but a set of activities as I see it. It's a set of mechanized steps. If you are able to make it part of your daily realm of things, you are largely in more ways than one building in a repeatable, scalable engine. If you rinse and repeat the actions and activities with every deal or every conversation that you initiate in your world, it becomes repetitive enough for you to, in more ways than one, become a champion on it. Okay. And for it to be effective, I believe relationship selling is largely dictated by a strategy. Again, an extension of what I just mentioned in terms of where do I see this headed. Okay. To let for one, the always be closing thought process be left aside. Okay. We've seen a lot of movies which focus on the very aggressive method of selling, and that works. It works differently for different organizations, and we can always continue to defend the thought process that the deals have to flow in through the bottom of the funnel in a very aggressive fashion. But relationship building is slow in nature. Relationship building follows a certain path which is much more calmer than the aggressive aspect. And like they say, if you spend more time practicing, you have to spend less time actually out there on the field when you are delivering. Okay. So relationship building in more ways than one is a practice. And now I'm going to speak specifically in terms of context to your conversations with your customers, specifically maybe using some examples also. I'll give you my very simple example to start with. When I started my career, I was responsible for selling a job portal. I was responsible for selling job postings, but I was fortunate enough to be one of the first few in my organization to be representing a certain region and a certain territory. And the world was our oyster. Okay. With that very opportunity, I was reaching out to fairly senior head HRs, head of talent acquisition folks out in the fraternity in the western region of India, especially in Bombay. And it gave me the opportunity to reach out to, because Bombay largely is a hotbed for financial services institutions, banks, NBFCs, etc. It gave me the opportunity to reach out to fairly senior folks there. And I remember one very specific conversation and one very specific meeting that I had with, HDFC Bank, one of the largest private sector bank in the country. And a very senior guy there told me, I was all of 24. And what I was told is, your organization has enabled you to come represent them here and meet me. Someone in my organization, perhaps at your age and stage in life, will take about 7 to 8 years to get to my cabin also. And that's the kind of differentiation, a sales role and a B2B role can give you. And why was that? That was only because I could muster up and gather up the courage to go and have that conversation with that senior gentleman also. So one of the first things that I want to reiterate with strong volition is that treat your prospects as humans. Do not treat them as demigods, irrespective of the product that you are selling, irrespective of the organization that you are representing, and irrespective of whoever it is on the other side of the phone. Of course, you have to be polite. Of course, you have to be docile. You have to have a certain polished, nuanced communication skill. But the person on the other end of the phone is not a scary individual. Please treat them as someone who are equal to you, because that's what leaders want. Leaders also do not want to be treated as demigods, because that's when the conversations start. And if you treat them as one, they are going to treat you back with the same authority. Okay. So one of the first things and one of the first key things that you need to understand about relationship building, if you want to be successful in sales, is you have to treat the other person as your equal, give them respect. But if you start getting intimidated by the person across the table who's going to spend his money or spend his organization's money and buy your product or buy your service, things start going southwards and downwards from there. Okay. So treat them as human, treat them like you would have a conversation, of course, with someone who's close to you, perhaps with your family as well, but just in a much more nuanced and polished fashion. That's the first thing that I would propose or recommend. Okay. Point number two, when you are having conversations, first impression is the last impression, and I live by this fact. Try to make it quality the first time itself. Okay. And this you have to work backwards towards your research, work backwards towards everything that you know about your prospect, work backwards towards everything that's out there available on the internet for you to equip yourself with before you have your first conversation as well. Okay. I remember back in the good old days when we would be out there, out on the field, meeting multiple customers. Evenings were rather spent for preparing for the meetings for the day after, or for the rest of the week. And a simple LinkedIn search, not just researching about the company, but researching about the person, really helps. And a very interesting memory comes to my mind. It was my very second meeting, and I can perhaps point out to the date also, maybe 21st August 2015. It was about 3 weeks after I had joined IM Jobs. I'd reached out to this co-founder of an organization. They were fairly small then. Now they are north of 1,000 crores in terms of business. And the only thing that stood by me was the university or the pedigree that this gentleman belonged to. Okay. And when I went and met them, I was fortunate enough. He did give me a meeting. We spent 30 minutes understanding what I was there and what I was proposing to sell. But then towards the end of the meeting, when we were just wrapping up, I happened to simply extend one liner asking, how was it to study at Cornell? Okay, because I do hear that it comes from, it's a very reputed pedigree, it's a very reputed institute, and I'm sure from being a graduate to now starting up your own firm, it must have been a very different journey altogether. And then the 30 minutes extended to another hour or so, and it just led to that person being felt special enough that someone who's actually come in for a very specific reason has now cared enough to ask me about my own personal experiences also. So speak quality right the very first time, and make sure that conversation actually has some kind of strong recollection. Taking forward the example, the one that I just quoted, another example that comes to mind, I'm sure a lot of you are B school graduates, and this is something that is part of all our case studies. The Starbucks example, something that's much more personalized, has a very strong recollection. So when you walk up to Starbucks, you are sure that the coffee is going to, of course, taste great. But your name being written on the on the coffee mug drives for a much more personalized experience, and that's a very small nuance. It's a nuance that if you take away with you, and if you build a strong recollect around it, I'm sure it's going to help you in your sales efforts towards building a much more stronger relationship. The third bit here, which is largely to each his own, but it's very imperative, and this is much more a nature and nuance of a conversation. When you have a customer reaching out to you, or when you have a prospect reaching out to you post your first conversation, please make sure you are in some way or the other profusely thankful to that person. Okay, because that's going to make them feel really special. Okay, you've done your pitch, you've gone and proposed your product, and the customer has said we'll reach out back to you. Okay, and now you're praying night and day whether this set of prospects will reach out back to me, or is it effort down the trail. Okay, but when they do, make sure that you receive that outreach with utmost gratitude, because that's what is going to make them feel really special. Something as simple as something that really worked for me in my early days was the fact that when I would have a prospect reaching out to me the second time or the third time, is when I would pick up the phone, and this is a rather snarky nuance, but it does help to tell them, I was just putting in place a list of my good meetings that I've had for in the last 1 month. And while I was going through the list, I was hoping that you would call me, and you did. And it seems like deja vu to me. I'm so happy that you've given me a call. Some very simple extensions like these go a long way in terms of making the prospect feel really nice about you and about your organization. One of the key things, some of you may be prospective sales folks here, some of you may be running your own businesses. or running your own set of solutions here, it's very important to know that you are a representative. And when you are a representative of a particular solution, of a particular product, of a particular company, of a particular industry, you come with some set of responsibilities, and these responsibilities need to be fulfilled by virtue of your demeanor and the way you make the other person feel via your conversation. So that's very key and that's very important. Next point that comes to my mind is a personal dissonance and a disconnect that I have with largely the B2C industry in the country. And I can go on and on about that experience very extensively. But in India, we've seen the B2C ecosystem being very transactional in nature. Okay. And then again, it depends on, the kind of customer you are and the kind of salesperson you are and the kind of company or product you're representing as well. And I'll explain this with a few examples. Okay. When I'm out there to, I don't know, opt for a credit card or a debit card, or when I'm out there opting for an internet connection or a telephone connection, the impact value is fairly lower. Okay. It's going to cost me a few $100 or a few $1,000 to get that service or get that product. And for me personally, the impact value is not going to be so very high. And because we are a country of too many people, and we are a country of too many salespeople as well, standardization of a very good sales experience is very difficult. It has to come by one's own volition. It has to come by one's own effort. I always maintain that the reason I may be a good sales guy is because I'm a very difficult customer. Okay. And that's largely coming from the experiences I don't get. And I'll now come to a very different set of examples. When I'm out there purchasing a property, or when I'm out there purchasing a very high value car as well, or a vehicle, I see that we are, as a country, as an ecosystem, not yet there in terms of a good sales experience. Okay. And when I am sitting across my prospects and customers selling softwares, I go back to that experience and I think, do I want to give the similar experience to my prospect? At one place, I was wanting to spend money, but because of a very poor sales experience that someone else extended towards me, and I ended up not making that decision. Okay. When I have someone who's a fairly senior person in the industry who's willing to risk $500,000, $1,000,000, 300, $400,000 of his company's money on me and on my product, do I want to give him a sales experience or not? Or do I want to give him a good, trustworthy sales experience or not? If that is the question you ask yourself, I think you've hit gold. Okay. And in the normal parlance, this is called empathy. If you feel for your customer, if you feel for the set of responsibilities that your prospect or customer also undertakes when he is opting for your service, okay, you are able to empathize with him and then consequently move towards building a much more stronger relationship with your prospect and the customer as well. Lastly, a few key elements on this. See, when I hope for all of you that you move forward towards selling and representing better products and better services into the future. But when you are in the enterprise ecosystem, okay, you are going to come across a very large community and fraternity of people who don't know what they are doing, and they are in their positions, they are in very senior positions of decision making as well. Okay. And there is where they will come with their own set of biases. Okay. They'll be like, हमने पहले ऐसा software लिया था, पहले ऐसा product लिया था, we opted for coaching services, that didn't help out. I don't know what is it that you are going to come up with differently. Okay. My suggestion to you is, let the customer stay with their biases. Okay. Do not try to defend by saying, look at the quality that we will extend. Okay. Let them stay with their biases, but continue to build a steady chain of communication with them, so that they eventually give you an opportunity to demonstrate. Okay. This might vary from industry to industry, and I can speak for, of course, the segment and the industry that I have largely represented over the years, but I want to keep it very generic because then it might confuse the larger audience here as well. So very key point, let the customer stay with their biases, but continue to maintain a steady flow of communication, because eventually the biases are going to be dissolved. And when that happens, you are going to be the first point of recollection for the customers. And at that point of time, you do not have to, and this is my earnest request, salespeople definitely start getting overconfident that, you know what, the customer has come back to us, ab kahan jayega. But that's not true. That's definitely not true. So you should continue to be as courteous. You should continue to work towards building that relationship and trust with that very prospect, and then move on to starting from zero again and helping the customer navigate through the entire sales process. This time they are going to operate from a point of high belief. Anything that you go and pitch to a prospect, largely in the Indian corporate ecosystem, they are always operating from a point of low belief. Okay. Because they have always had experiences, and this is across the industry. They've some or the other person has had experiences which have never been up to the mark. We are a country of complaints, and we will always find, some nook or cranny to complain about as well. But if you let that not undermine you, or let that not demotivate you, and you focus towards what you set out to do, there is no reason that why you won't be successful with regards to, this approach. So a few key things to summarize on this: treat your customers as human, do not get intimidated by them. Your first set of conversations, or your first set of conversation, has to be quality. Your research becomes very important there. And make sure that the conversation is sharp enough, is important enough, is sensitive enough that they remember you. When they remember you, express gratitude, express acknowledgement, and express appreciation. Very important, please don't be transactional in your approach, irrespective of the product that you are selling. Lastly, allow your customers to make mistakes, allow your customers to stay with biases, but continue a steady flow of communication, because once their biases get dissolved, they'll definitely come back to you, and you start with the entire process again. Okay. A few key things that have helped me over the course of my sales career. Okay. Sales is largely about travel. And personally, I enjoy traveling a lot, whether it is within one's own periphery, or, largely to wherever the customers are also. If you're making good use of technology, some tools out there that help you track where your customers are in the funnel, and, pick up the phone whenever you are in your cabs. Pick up the phone, have a word with them. If they are already existing customers, just pick up the phone and ask them, kaisa chal raha hai? Are you getting the right kind of support that the customer success team or the support team is extending or not? Okay. Look for referrals, look for customer referrals, look for references. They are the ones. A happy customer is the one who's going to be your strongest, fastest lead. Okay. So make use of travel well. Pick up the phone, have conversations. Do not have conversations in the want for more business, but have conversations to show that you care. Okay. Like I said, make it a routine. Okay. Something as simple that I would do is, or even I do this now when I'm traveling, even if I'm driving, I make it a point that I'm looking through my contact list and having conversations. It just makes the travel much more worthwhile, and it makes sure that I have ticked these action items off my list. Okay. I It's not easier for me to do this now, but previously I would make sure that I am meeting my existing customers at least once in a month. Prospects is a very different story altogether. Prospects, most of the time you're calling them to follow up. मैंने proposal भेजा था, क्या हुआ, right? Or have you had a chance to discuss this internally? That will always continue to happen. But the more stronger bond you are able to establish with your existing customers also, the ones who've entrusted belief in you and paid money to you and bought your product, the more easier it is going to be to build relationships into the future also. That's going to be very key. Okay. Point number 4, yes, implementation of everything, which is point number 1, 2, and 3, and rinse and repeat. Remember one thing, some phrases that you can live through in life, which will not only help you in sales, but it will help you when you're running your own organization. Also is the fact that you have to build a repeatable, scalable engine. A set of activities that have worked for you. If you do that enough number of times, it's like exercise. If you do it enough number of times, it's going to give you success. So if you live by this mantra, I think there is no reason that you're not going to drive success in sales. And that's when your relationship building has actually succeeded. It's not that you will go and sell the customer something that they don't need. But when they are in need, and when you are part of an ecosystem which is selling that product or that service, it is going to be your strongest validation as an individual, as a sales professional, that because I am here, this organization or this prospect has come to me and buying my product. It's going to give you a very different high. And believe me, I've been there, I continue to be there, be in such situations many times, and it's a good feeling. It's a really good feeling. A few quick cheat codes, if I may call it that, something that has helped me in the enterprise ecosystem. And Kev, to your point, when customers come with their own biases, sometimes this can help, which is point number one. Okay, which is agree with the customer. Yes, there are problems with the product, there are problems with the fraternity, but if you do some kind of anti-selling to showcase, and sometimes maybe just call out questions to say, is there someone else who can help you with this? Is there someone else who can help solve for this problem? If not, then maybe mine is the product that you need to go ahead with to start with. Okay, that kind of anti-selling really helps. And irrespective of whatever bias or status quo that the customer comes up with, sometimes it just helps to tell them that the world has found success with me. There is no reason that you will not be able to find success with my product or my service. So that can help. That's a very quick cheat code. Other one is always in the people who are selling to larger enterprises, people who are selling high value deals, it helps to go top to bottom, because that is the approach that largely works. The decision maker, if he is the first person you reach out to, that's going to help you close the deal much more faster, or at least give you clarity. One of the things that I always tell my team is that I don't want a CRM which has a lot of leads. I want a CRM which has minimum number of relevant leads who are moving across different stages in the funnel and eventually to closure. Because this is a learning that I have also kind of achieved over life, is the lesser number of decisions you make, the more successful you are. And you have to reach to a point wherein you don't have to look through 100, 150 accounts in your funnel. You have to reach to a point wherein most of the accounts are either outside your funnel, out of the funnel, not relevant, or into the funnel and moving towards closure. That kind of decision making will require a lot of effort, will require a lot of research. But if you get to that, it's going to make life much more easier. Okay. Treat every relationship differently. Relationships are not one size fits all. It's very important that you treat them differently. Treat them, there are middle level managers you'll speak to, there are top level managers you'll speak to. Sometimes you'll speak to really frontline folks who are on the customer's end, and they might speak to you in a way that you may not even enjoy. But you have to continue to be cordial and make sure that somehow or the other you establish that distance, while also ensuring that you have their back across the hierarchy of the org. That's going to be very key. Something that I live by: be cordial to leaders, friendly to middle managers, because they are the ones who will be able to move around things. They are the executioners. They are the ones who will want to feel good about themselves in terms of making decisions. So be closer to them. Go have smokes with them, go have drinks with them, go have a lot of family conversations with them. Make them feel like you are part of the same boat that they are also sailing in, because they are the ones who will be able to convince their leadership. They are the ones who will keep their subordinates in line should there be any detractors in your prospects also. Okay, try to make the conversations much more informal also sometimes. If that helps, find common interests, find common situations that you are in. When you're talking to someone, you will understand whether they're of the same age group, same stage group, a similar life experiences, and perhaps establish conversations around those life experiences. You may have a prospect who enjoys travel as much as you do. Can you share travel experiences? Can you take advice? Can you give advice? Everything is going to give you an output or a learning. So look at that from a conversation angle and not from an outcome angle all the time. And a very key cheat code that helps you build much more faith and belief within the prospect is: do not try to make your product or yourself the champion in their world. Try to make them the champion in their world. Because if you do that, no matter where they go, they are going to take you along. That's something that's very key. This framework is something that is an implementation framework. This framework that is something that's also a relationship framework. Okay. And it has largely, any relationship has largely 5 stages in which you can achieve success. One is you discover the set of people, the set of prospects you want to develop a relationship with, develop a bond largely with. Then you focus on designing a strategy around this. Like I said, no one size fits all. So you'll have to put together, put a pen and paper together and design a strategy around what is going to be your way forward with each prospect, each account in terms of building a relationship. And then find standardizations around it also. Okay. You don't need to write a separate story for everybody. But if you know there are 5 customers who are facing problems, I don't know, let's say with their recruiting, okay, and all 5 of them belong to the same industry. What is the kind of solution or a standard communication channel then you can, standard communication content that you can put together so that there is impact across 5 together? Okay. Put that in design, put that to build, which largely means execute, monitor impact and outcome also. Okay. A lot of us who are in prospecting, who are SDRs, who are just responsible for outreach, we are spraying and praying emails by the day and making phone calls by the day without seeing or testing the impact. If I have made 100 calls in a day and I managed to only have 30 conversations and only one meeting, is it a content issue? Is it my database issue? Am I the issue, or the people that I'm reaching out to is the issue, which is largely the database issue? So find that out, clean your processes better, and then follow the steps again from discover, design, build. So it's important to test out every effort that you're making and make sure that this kind of reaches back to phase 1 for you or step 1 for you. And then of course finally deployment is when the successful deployment of your efforts and activities actually help you see the results. And that's when you know that you've closed the deal, you've continued to make a stronger relationship, and then it enables you to move forward also. So largely, if you focus on these 5 phases for every transaction, every conversation, every relationship, every prospect, it's going to help you standardize your efforts extensively as well. And what you see below that is largely in terms of the stakeholders that you need to manage or the key aspects that you need to manage. You have to discover the right set of businesses you want to sell to. You have to discover the right set of stakeholders you have to sell to. Discover the right set of deliverables. And then one of the very important things that in the past, one of the leaders that I was working for told me, in sales, it does not matter what you get me by the end of the month. It matters what you get me as of yesterday or today. So that's very important. Timelines are important for your internal stakeholders as well as your external stakeholders. Whenever you are promising delivery, promise delivery to your customers also. And then work backwards to live towards that delivery also. Even if it is sending a deck, even if it is sending success stories, even if it is sending customer testimonials, make sure you live by the commitments that you've made. Okay. And all of this together will require one keyword that is very famous these days in MBA colleges. It's been famous for the last 5-7 years, which is self-re-engineering. But this is not just important for relationship building. This is largely important for life as well. You'll have to look within to see whether do you possess the skill sets to first realize there are problems in the way you are approaching your work, and then work backwards to self-re-engineer yourself. This is a much more sophisticated word for customer success. This is a much more sophisticated word for relationship building also. And a few key elements that actually help you put down steps in order. Okay. Hypercare. This is nothing but post-sales care, which is important for people who, again, trusted you with their money, trusted you with their responsibilities. You have to understand, if you are selling a 1 crore, 2 crore, 3 crore software or a product or a service, people have put their jobs on the line because they have opted for your product or service. So you have to make sure that you will ensure continuous hypercare, continuous customer success for them. Try being a single point of contact for people, at least the ones who've made a decision in your favor. Make sure that their subordinates also find success with the product and the program, because nobody is permanent at their positions ever. Okay. If you rely on just one person in your client company that he is going to be the whole and soul for you, and not look towards the branches and the tributaries that flow through him or her, then you are preparing yourself for future failure. So make sure that you touch base with every key stakeholder that ties up to your main stakeholder. Plan for interventions. I don't know what process your company would follow or what process you follow in terms of post sales, but make sure that you plan at least your own interventions. So whenever I am closing a deal or my team members are closing a deal, I tell them that this is not where your job ends. You've signed the contract, have the finance team send the invoice, but now I want a plan of engagement that you will also do. There will be a separate team who will do it, but I want you to also put in place a plan of engagement with the customer. That's going to be very important. Monitor, train, of course, see how success is being delivered. Talk to folks internally. Care for your customer, and the care for your customer will always come in when you have internally also aligned things. It's not easy, it's very difficult. Okay. Even while being head of sales for my own organization, I have to fight battles for my customer all the time. But it's worth it, because nobody more than you is going to feel closer to the customer. You are their first point of contact. You should always continue to be their last point of contact also. And then of course there are nuances around making sure, like I said, put a plan of engagement, be part of the monthly business reviews, be part of the quarterly business reviews, identify bottlenecks in the current delivery or service or in the current adoption, and then continue to solve for it internally and externally both. And of course look for more opportunities. A customer can continue to be an ever giving source of revenue for you if you play your cards right. And your cards can be played right when you're focusing on hypercare. A few stories that I thought I'll share, and I wanted to kind of get, the content before this out of the way. When I was working, with IM jobs, we'd come up with a very separate product offering altogether also. And I was in touch with India's fourth largest private bank at that point of time. And the deal had fell through. I was in touch with the authority who would make the decision on this. The deal fell through. But the one thing that I continue to do is drop in a note, drop in a message, drop in an email once every month. Okay. And I remember it was around October, maybe around the time of Diwali. I sent out, season's greetings note out to the leader, to the stakeholder there, along with a simple note saying, if this is not the right time for me, do let me know. And we'll connect when the time is right. It's been 6 years now. I had the deal in the next very month. And that kind of also gave me enough confidence that the steps that I'm investing in terms of maintaining some sort of standardized regular communication really helps, because you never know, the customer might not think of you at all times. Okay, someone else might have come in and proposed another solution internally, and they might not think of you. They can only think of you when they hear from you. And you can only build relationships when you're having conversations continuously with someone. So it all ties back to your efforts of outreach. Okay. Similar was the story with, the largest reinsurance service provider in the world. Okay. They're now $1 trillion organization. And then for that organization, even though the time was not right in terms of their budgets to invest, I would make a visit after, of course, checking in for time, putting in calendar invites, but go visit them once a month and kind of understand how are they solving for the other problems in their ecosystem. Got nothing to do with something that I was selling them. And 6 visits for the next 6 months helped me bag one of the largest deals of my lifetime with that organization. And I still, this was back in 2016, I still have that note from one of the stakeholders recognizing me for being, for staying in touch for a very long time, irrespective of the outcome. And that kind of, helps you where you are. Okay. Back in 2020, when we were all fighting a global calamity, fighting a pandemic, that was when I had the opportunity to bag my first $1 million deal. And when that happened, it was the number 3 private sector bank in the country. I am now their default recruiting system. That could only happen because of 8 months long of continuous relationship building, about 25 demos with different stakeholders, supporting infosec teams, supporting finance teams, supporting procurement teams, supporting business stakeholders. So managing all these threads, this is a nuance that you come across more in enterprise deals, but to have the wherewithal, to have the patience, and to stick by these conversations for such a long time, the fruit that you bear is $1 million deal. Okay, and this is a very key. Last one is a very key example. My first very big deal when I started out my career was in Jan of 2016. And that very organization helped me get into the thick of things in terms of spreading my wings as a sales professional, because that's when I first tasted success. And when I first tasted success, the relationships were so strong enough that in 2019, when I had already left the company that they were engaged with and moved on to my second or third role as well, my current founder reached out to him because they were also customers, asking them, कोई है क्या sales में head करने के लिए तो बताना. And out of the blue, that gentleman recommended me. I was not even largely in touch with that person, but he recommended me. I was working somewhere else. I was not looking for a job, but then the conversations happened and now I am here. So I can only attribute it to the experience that a certain individual or a certain leader will get with you when you are engaged with them. They will trust you enough to recommend you and kind of put their name and reputation at stake also, because when you're referring or recommending someone, a lot is on the line. But it was important for me to share these quick anecdotes and stories. In the interest of time, I've kind of made it very crisp, but I wanted to share this with you because I'm sure you've had similar experiences, and perhaps better than the ones that I have just called out. So, or if not, work towards getting these similar experiences. You have to understand what matters to that customer, to that prospect. If you cannot establish direct relationships with that person, you have to try establishing relationships either with their superiors or with their subordinates, and try to get inroads into the organization again. Okay, and if you get an opportunity to have a one-on-one with that very person who's for some reason now resenting your organization, resenting your product, take a leader from your organization who's at the highest authority and showcase reassurance by having that leader coming and sitting across, because that is going to help. See, if that customer is very important, it's going to matter to your leader also. Okay, so you will have to get get that internal support also, and tell them that I need you to come with me because this customer has harbored some negative emotions about our organization, and I need this to be corrected, and the only way it will be is when someone of your stature can also come in. So these are, if you can't move mountains, get people to move mountains for you. That's going to become very important. See, biases are of largely two kinds. One is situational bias and the other is self bias. Okay. Let's say my prospect, who's perhaps, I don't know, a head HR in one particular company. Now that company is very conservative and they never spent in HR technology or in progressive technologies. Now, if that is the situation, the person will have the bias, kitna bhi acha product ho, hame approval nahi milega, and I will not get the budgets to go ahead and purchase this software. This is a situational bias. But I have to be in touch with the customer because I know this prospect is progressive enough that when he moves to the other organization or to any other organization, he's definitely going to think of me. So that is why a steady stream of communication is important when you want to solve for situational bias. Now, when there is self bias, wherein let's say this prospect has used your software in the past and it has not worked out well in another company altogether, or your product in the past and it's not worked out for that person in the past, then something I suggested to Nitin could help. Kind of incorporate or bring in an evangelist or a leader, make them talk to other customers. This is something I don't know if the kind of products that all of you represent or sell or wish to sell, is this one step part of your sales process. But largely when it comes to enterprise sales, customers want to talk, prospects want to talk to customers, and that is very key. Make them, don't let them see testimonials only on LinkedIn. Share, talk to your customer, tell them, I'm negotiating another deal, there is a prospect who's being very hard. If, is it okay if they can pick up the phone, call you, and you can share your good experiences? That is going to help solve for or clear out a lot of cloud for this difficult prospect. The answer is very big resounding yes. You should. So I'm sure Mark Cuban is a name that's synonymous with all of you. He's one of the leading billionaires of the world, and he professes that perfection is the killer of profitability. So if you are always going to wait for, so you should never wait for all the signals to go green and then start driving. In the similar fashion, you should never wait for all the pieces to be in order for you to start putting out a business. So you should start with whatever minimum you have, which is, it's in sophisticated parlance, it's called MVP, which is minimum viable product. So if you think that with an MVP, with a minimum viable product, you can go out in the market and start at least proposing your services, and it's going to get you some visibility. It's going to help you create the right kind of noise. You should go ahead and do it. I am no champion on leveraging the power of social media, but there is enough and more opportunity out there to leverage social selling as a way for you to grab eyeballs. Okay. The important thing is you have to, and social selling is not relationship selling. These are two different things. We should, of course, establish that. But what is important is going to be to get your right kind of communication, to get to target the right kind of audience, and also even if you have minimum testimonials, spray and pray the market as much with those testimonials so that some or the other lead gets generated. Okay. And do not just rely on testimonials from customers. Ask them to talk to their network. In your industry, problems are all pervasive. So if you've solved or coached a few individuals, they will know other set of individuals who face a similar need for coaching or who want a similar need for coaching. And you can solve for this by asking them, can you recommend and refer me to your world? That can help you get started. When it comes to relationship building also, it's not just the one relationship that you are going to build as a sales professional or as someone who's representing a product. So one of the things that I always tell my team is that if 50 people are not going to pick up your phone, there are another 500 people who will be out there to respond to you. Okay. And who will be out there to help you build the relationships that you are wanting to build. Okay. With that being said, it's also very key to understand that this person is going to live with his biases. You'll have to start finding alternate people within that organization to maybe try developing a bond, and maybe share content to say, I understand these are the problems, and these are the problems that a lot of these people also have faced, but some of my customers have seen success now. And share, like I said, sharing stories will definitely help. Sharing success stories will definitely help try for solving the problem that you're experiencing.